Chapter 1. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it felt like it was trying to drown the city. I sat hunched on a wobbly red plastic stool, shivering as the damp chill seeped into my bones, hiding under the plastic awning of Kenji's Street Ramen. Above me, a broken neon sign buzzed like an angry hornet, flashing hot pink and electric blue across the wet pavement. I picked up my splintered wooden chopsticks and stirred the rich, greasy pork broth, the smell of roasted garlic heavy in the damp air. It was my 5th anniversary with Maya today. We were supposed to be at the Obsidian Room, eating a steak. I had booked the table 3 months in advance, dreaming of the warm candlelight. Instead, I was sitting in an alleyway smelling of damp garbage and roasted garlic, eating a $9 bowl of noodles. Why? Because my phone was currently vibrating on the wet metal counter. The cracked screen flashed her name, Maya. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the glowing glass, letting the cold rain tap violently against the plastic awning over my head. I knew exactly what she was going to say. I took a slow sip of my broth, letting the spicy heat burn down my throat, grounding me in the miserable reality, and finally swiped the green button. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice completely flat and devoid of the warmth I used to reserve just for her. "Leon, baby. I am so sorry." Maya's voice tumbled out of the speaker, breathless and rushed. She didn't sound genuinely sorry. She sounded annoyed that she even had to make the call. It was the tone of a woman checking a tedious chore off a list. "Let me guess," I interrupted, twirling some noodles around my chopsticks. "The servers crashed again." There was a split-second pause on the other end, the silence heavy with unsaid lies. "Yes, exactly. It's a total disaster down here. The whole back end is on fire, and the new update just completely failed." "I can't leave the office," Maya continued. "I know it's our anniversary, but I'll make it up to you, I swear." I chewed a slice of pork, tasting nothing but ash. "Right," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The servers. Total fire." "Don't use that tone with me, Leon," she snapped. The fake guilt instantly turned into sharp defense. "I'm running a startup. The company you invested in, remember? If this fails, we both lose," Maya argued. "You think I want to be stuck staring at a screen of broken code instead of eating steak with you? Thank you. You're the best. I'll buy you a nice watch or something next week. Love you. Bye." The line went dead before I could even open my mouth to say goodbye. I didn't throw my phone into the street. I didn't scream. I just felt a deep, freezing numbness spread through my chest. It was a familiar, exhausting cold. It was the exact same cold I felt every time a certain junior developer's name came up. Julian. He was a 22-year-old kid Maya had hired 6 months ago. He couldn't write a clean line of code if someone held a gun to his head. But what Julian lacked in actual tech skills, he made up for in weaponized pity. He was always having a crisis, a panic attack, a bad day because he missed his hometown, a sudden mysterious stomach ache whenever a deadline approached. And Maya, the tough, ruthless, independent woman I fell in love with, had suddenly turned into his personal savior, offering heartwarming comfort to a parasite. I opened my phone and tapped on Chirp, the social media app. I didn't even have to search hard. Julian's profile was right at the top of my feed. He posted everything, treating the internet like his personal diary. He had posted exactly 4 minutes ago. The picture was taken inside a cozy, dimly lit apartment, definitely not a brightly lit, frantic startup office. It was a close-up of a steaming bowl of chicken soup. But the soup wasn't what made my blood stop running. The bowl itself was a heavy, handmade clay bowl with a distinct blue wave pattern. The exact same bowl I had bought Maya from a pottery market 2 years ago. I read the caption beneath the photo. Thought I was going to have a total panic attack tonight. So lucky to have the best boss in the world. Servers can wait when mental health is on the line. Warm soup cures everything, Julian had written, adding a string of pleading emojis. I stared at the glowing screen. The neon pink light from the street sign reflected on the glass, making Julian's stupid little emojis look like they were smeared in blood. The sheer audacity of it was almost funny in a twisted, dark way. "Servers can wait," I read out loud. My voice sounded foreign to me, hollow. Maya wasn't at the office fixing a crash. She had ditched our 5th anniversary dinner to go to Julian's apartment and cook him soup because he was feeling a little sad. She lied straight to my face, and she didn't even care that Julian was broadcasting it to the world. "Hey, buddy, you want extra garlic oil?" Kenji, the old man running the ramen cart, yelled over the loud hissing of the rain. I blinked, pulling my eyes away from the screen. "Yeah," I replied. "Dump it in. Make it as spicy as you legally can." "Bad night?" Kenji asked, pouring a dark, chili speckled oil into my bowl. "No," I said softly, grabbing my chopsticks again. "Actually, it is the clearest night I've had in months." I wasn't angry anymore, Anger took energy. Anger meant you still cared enough to fight. Over the last 6 months, Maya and I had fought 100 times about Julian. Every single time, she called me crazy. She called me insecure, toxic, and jealous. She told me Julian was just a kid, that he had no friends in Seattle, and she was just being a supportive leader. But this, lying about a server crash on our anniversary to play nurse to a grown man, that wasn't just disrespectful, it was pathetic. I thought about my mother. She passed away 3 years ago, leaving me her entire life savings. I took every single penny of that inheritance and handed it to Maya to fund her dream startup. I wanted to see her succeed. My mother's sweat, her tears, her entire legacy, currently paying the salary of a manipulative parasite who is eating soup out of my girlfriend's favorite bowl. No more. I slurped down the rest of the ramen. The spice burned beautifully, waking my senses up. My phone vibrated again. A text from Maya. It read, "Please, don't be mad. Order something nice on my card tonight. We will celebrate tomorrow." I looked at the message. A dark, cynical laugh bubbled up in my throat. I didn't type a reply. I didn't block her either. I just slid the phone into my leather jacket pocket. I stood up, dropping a $20 bill on the wet counter. "Keep the change, Kenji," I said. "Leaving already? It is pouring out there," the old man called out, wiping his hands on a towel. "I've got a lot of packing to do," I said. I stepped out from under the plastic awning. The freezing Seattle rain hit my face immediately, soaking into my hair and sliding down my neck. I didn't run for cover. I just walked down the neon-lit street, stepping right through the deep, glowing puddles. The relationship was dead. Now, it was just time to bury it. Chapter 2. The digital clock on the scratched mahogany bedside table flashed 5:45 a.m. in harsh, red numbers. Outside, the Seattle rain was still hammering against the bedroom window, a relentless gray waterfall, washing away the neon glow of the street lamps. I was already out of bed. I hadn't slept a single minute, but my mind felt sharper than it had in months, wrapped in a cold clarity. Normally, at this exact time, I would be in the kitchen. I used to grind the dark roast beans by hand, brew the coffee just the way Maya liked it, and have a hot mug waiting for her the second she woke up. I used to think acts of service were how you kept love alive. Now, I realized, they were just a great way to become the hired help in your own relationship. Instead of making coffee, I stood by the closet, quietly folding my black t-shirts and dropping them into a canvas duffel bag. I had a freelance graphic design gig across town today, but packing the bag felt like practice for leaving. At exactly 6:02 a.m., the heavy brass lock on the front door clicked. The door creaked open, and quiet footsteps shuffled into the hallway. Maya was trying to sneak in. I kept folding my clothes, my face completely blank as she walked into the bedroom. She froze the moment she saw me. Her wet trench coat dripped onto the hardwood floor. Her hair was messy, and she looked exhausted. But she didn't smell like the stale, ozone-heavy air of a server room. She smelled like cheap lavender, fabric softener. Julian's apartment always smelled like lavender. "Oh," Maya gasped, her hand jumping to her chest. "You're awake. You scared me." "Morning," I said, my voice as flat as a sheet of glass. I didn't look up. I just zipped up my duffel bag. She let out a loud, theatrical sigh, dropping her leather purse onto the floor. She rolled her shoulders, playing the part of the exhausted CEO. "God, what a nightmare," Maya said with an exaggerated groan. "We literally just got the servers back online." I was staring at broken code for 9 straight hours. "My eyes feel like they have sand in them," she complained. I finally looked at her. It was fascinating. Really, watching someone construct a lie right to your face when you already hold all the puzzle pieces. I felt a dark, twisted urge to laugh, but I kept my expression entirely dead. "Is that so?" I asked smoothly. "Yeah, it was brutal," Maya said, kicking off her boots. She gave me a weak, pleading smile. "Listen, I am so sorry about our anniversary dinner. Baby, I feel terrible," she pleaded. "Did you make any of your special dark roast? I desperately need a cup before I crash." I picked up my duffel bag and swung it over my shoulder. "No," I replied. "I didn't make coffee." Her smile faltered. "Oh, okay. Well, I can make it," Maya stammered. "You shouldn't have to," I interrupted, walking toward the bedroom door. "You've had a long night. You should just have Julian make it," I continued evenly. "I saw on Chirp that he has a real talent for serving warm liquids when there's an emergency." The silence that hit the room was heavier than the rain outside. Maya stopped breathing. All the fake exhaustion vanished from her face, replaced instantly by naked panic. Her eyes darted around the room, as if looking for an escape route. You. Maya swallowed hard. You saw his post. Hard to miss, I said casually, leaning against the doorframe. It's amazing how he managed to cure his panic attack with soup in a handmade blue clay bowl. It looked exactly like the one I bought you at the Pike Place Market 2 years ago. I noted. The one you said you took to the office for oatmeal. The panic in Maya's eyes rapidly shifted into burning, defensive anger. It was her favorite trick. When caught in a lie, go on the attack! Are you seriously stalking my junior developer's social media right now? Maya snapped, her voice rising. That is so toxic. Leon, you are completely invading his privacy. I actually chuckled. A short, dark sound. He posted it on a public feed, Maya, with 4 different emojis. He wasn't exactly hiding it, I said. He was having a severe mental breakdown, she yelled, throwing her hands up in the air. He's 22 years old. He is all alone in this massive city. He thought he was having a heart attack, Leon. What was I supposed to do? Let him suffer alone in his apartment? She screamed. He is 22, I repeated slowly. When I was 22, I was working 2 jobs and paying off my late mother's medical debt. I didn't call my boss crying so she could skip her 5-year anniversary to spoon. Feed me broth, I added with brutal calm. You are so insensitive. Maya screamed, stepping toward me. Not everyone is a cold, emotionless robot like you. He was fragile. He needed someone. It's called basic human empathy. Leon, you should try it sometime, she cried. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was breathing heavily, her face flushed with righteous anger. She fully believed she was the hero of this story. In the past, this was the exact moment I would have lost my temper. I would have yelled back. We would have fought for an hour. She would have cried, and I would have ended up apologizing just to stop the noise. But today, I felt absolutely nothing. No jealousy, no rage. Just a cold, dark void. You're right, I said quietly. Maya blinked, thrown off balance. She had braced herself for a screaming match. What? She asked, confused. You're right, I am cold, I said, shifting the strap of my bag. But remember one thing, Maya. The only reason you have a company, the only reason you have an office to leave, and the only reason you can pay that fragile kid's salary is because I gave you my dead mother's inheritance. Every single penny, I stated. Maya's face went chalk, white. Leon, don't bring your mother into this. You know I appreciate the investment. I'm going to pay you back, she stuttered. I'm not looking for a refund right now, I lied, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I'm just giving you a reality check. You want to play savior to a parasite? Go ahead. But don't expect me to applaud while you do it, I added coldly. Leon, wait, you're not making any sense. Maya cried out, stepping forward to grab my arm. Why aren't you yelling? Why are you acting like this? She pleaded. I pulled my arm out of her reach. I looked her dead in the eyes and gave her a smile. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a hollow, dead, terrifying curve of the lips. It was the smile of a man who had already left the building. I have to go to work, I said softly. Enjoy the apartment. Maya, make your own coffee. I turned my back on her, walked down the hallway, and stepped out the front door. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently until the heavy brass lock clicked into place. As I walked out into the freezing Seattle rain, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't even bother to look. The game was over, and she didn't even realize she had already lost. Chapter 3. It was almost midnight when I finally unlocked the front door of our apartment. The Seattle rain was still falling, a heavy, endless drumbeat against the large living room windows. Outside, the neon lights of the city painted the wet glass in shades of toxic green and bruised purple, casting long, sickly shadows across the floor. My shoulders ached. I had just finished a brutal 14-hour shift, designing a brand kit for a demanding corporate client. I was starving. My eyes burned from staring at pixels, and all I wanted was to collapse into my bed and sleep for a week. But as I kicked off my wet shoes, I noticed a thin slice of bright blue light creeping out from under the study door. And then I heard it. Clack, clack, clack. The frantic, desperate sound of Maya, hammering away at her mechanical keyboard, the keys snapping like tiny bones. I didn't call out her name. I walked down the dark hallway, my socks making no sound on the hardwood floor. I stopped at the slightly open door and pushed it a few inches wider. Maya was hunched over her massive curved monitor. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, and she was chewing nervously on her bottom lip. She looked stressed, overworked, and completely wired on caffeine. I shifted my gaze to the screen. The text was huge. She wasn't looking at her high-level executive dashboard. She was logged into a junior developer portal. Julian's portal. She was frantically rewriting a messy, broken string of basic user interface code. It was pathetic. It was stuff a first-year computer science student could do in their sleep. Sitting right next to her keyboard was a ridiculous, lopsided ceramic mug. It had crude, hand-painted letters on it that read, "To my tech angel, love, Julian." A dark, bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. Maya jumped so hard, she nearly knocked her expensive office chair over. She gasped, her hands flying to the mouse to quickly minimize the coding window. "Leon! Jesus Christ, you scared the life out of me!" She snapped, clutching her chest as if she had just seen a ghost. I leaned casually against the doorframe, crossing my arms over my damp jacket. "Working late, boss. Or are you just doing someone else's homework?" I asked mockingly. Her face flushed red, caught right in the act. But just like this morning, she instantly went on the attack. "Don't start with me, Leon," she commanded sharply. "I have a massive investor meeting tomorrow at noon. The new update has a critical bug in the login loop. If I don't fix it tonight, the app crashes and we lose our funding," Maya yelled defensively. "And whose job was it to write that login loop?" I asked softly, my voice cold and deadly calm. "It is a team effort," she shrieked. "Julian tried his best. Okay, he was stuck. He worked on it for 3 days, but he just couldn't crack it. It is a tricky piece of code," she pleaded. "It is a basic login script, Maya. A 12-year-old on a gaming forum could write it," I fired back, stepping into the room. "So, let me get this straight," I said slowly. "He fails to do his basic job. You skip our 5-year anniversary to feed him soup for his fake anxiety. And now you are staying up until midnight doing his actual work for him," I asked. "You just don't get it," she screamed, slamming her hands down on the desk. "I am the CEO! The buck stops with me! If he fails, I fail. If the company fails, we are out on the street," she yelled frantically. "No," I said, taking a slow step toward her. "If he fails, you fire him, like a real boss, like a normal company. You don't hold his hand, you don't feed him out of my pottery, and you don't do his job while he sleeps soundly in his lavender-scented apartment," I stated. "Stop being so incredibly jealous," Maya shrieked, her voice echoing off the walls. "You are acting insane. You're obsessed with a 22-year-old kid. He is just an employee. Why are you acting like this over a stupid bug fix?" she demanded. My eyes drifted away from her angry face and landed on the desk. I looked at that hideous, lopsided ceramic mug. "To my tech angel." I didn't think about it. I just acted. I stepped forward, grabbed the ugly mug by its thick handle, and chucked it as hard as I physically could against the exposed brick wall of the study. Crash! The loud explosion of ceramic echoed like a gunshot through the apartment. Cold, stale coffee splashed across the bricks, and sharp pieces of cheap clay rained down on the hardwood floor. Maya screamed. Not a scream of fear, but a scream of pure, unhinged horror. She leaped out of her chair. She dropped to her knees, staring at the broken shards, like I had just murdered her family pet. "Are you crazy?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "What is wrong with you? Julian hand-painted that for me. It took him hours. He gave it to me for Boss's Day." It was dark, twisted comedy. Our 5-year relationship was literally burning to the ground right in front of her face, and she was crying over a $5 piece of ugly trash. He spent hours painting a mug, but he couldn't spend 1 hour learning how to code the job you pay him for, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. Maya scrambled to pick up a large piece of the mug, her hands shaking. She glared up at me, her eyes filled with toxic hatred. "You are a psycho, Leon. You are a violent, controlling psycho," she spat. "You think you own me. You think you own this company. You're destroying my things because you have a pathetic ego," she cried. "Your things?" I asked, my voice dropping so low it was almost a whisper. The room felt freezing cold. "Maya, take a good look around this room," I commanded quietly. "Look at the desk. Look at the $3,000 monitor. Look at the servers humming in the corner." She stopped yelling, still clutching the broken ceramic piece to her chest. "I paid for every single wire in this room," I continued, staring dead into her eyes. "I paid for the server space. I paid the legal fees to start your LLC. I paid for it all with my dead mother's money. Every penny of her life savings went into your dream," I told her. Maya swallowed hard, the color draining from her face again. "Leon, I told you I'll pay you back," she whimpered. "My mother is in the ground, Maya," I said, my voice slicing through the air like a knife. "She is not coming back to bail you out. Stop playing savior to a parasite. Stop using her ghost to fund your weird obsession with a lazy kid," I warned. "You are toxic," she whispered, shaking her head. "You are so unbelievably toxic and controlling. I can't even look at you right now. Get out of my office." "Gladly," I replied. I didn't argue. I didn't demand an apology. I just turned around and walked out of the study. I went into the living room, grabbed a spare gray blanket off the sofa, and walked down the hall to the small guest bedroom. I stepped inside, closed the heavy wooden door, and twisted the lock. A loud, solid click echoed in the small room. The Cold War had officially begun. I threw the blanket onto the bare mattress, laid down in my clothes, and listened to the Seattle rain hitting the window. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 5 years, my heart wasn't racing after a fight. I didn't feel the urge to run back out and fix things. I just felt calm, cold, hard, and totally free. Chapter 4. By Friday night, the Cold War in the apartment had frozen solid. Maya and I hadn't spoken a single word to each other in 3 days. We lived like ghosts, haunting the same hallway. I stayed locked in the small guest room, buried in freelance design work, while she spent her time at the startup office. She was coming home long after I had locked my door, the silence between us heavy and suffocating. It was almost midnight. The endless Seattle rain was lashing against the thin glass of the guest room window, a chaotic rhythm in the dark. I was sitting at my desk, the harsh blue light of the monitor reflecting off my face as I meticulously edited a logo file, when my phone started vibrating violently against the wood. The bright screen lit up the dark room, jarring my focus. The caller ID didn't say Maya. It said Trent. Trent was Maya's lead marketing director. He was a classic, obnoxious tech bro who wore expensive fleece vests, and always talked to me like I was a lost child because I was a freelance artist, not a tech founder. He and the rest of Maya's toxic work circle had never respected me. I stared at the phone. I knew exactly what this was. I picked it up and swiped the green button. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice dead flat and devoid of any warmth. Instantly, a wall of deafening, heavy bass music blasted through the speaker. They were at the Neon Circuit, an overpriced, flashy club downtown. Over the thumping music, I could hear Trent shouting, "Yo, Leon, man, finally, you need to get your butt down here, bro." Trent yelled, his words slurring together. He was clearly drunk. "Why?" I asked simply, leaning back in my squeaking desk chair. "Because your girl is absolutely wasted, man." Trent laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that grated against my ears. In the background, I heard the sound of glass breaking and a woman sobbing. It sounded like Maya. "She's a total mess tonight. Crying over some argument you guys had. She keeps saying your name," Trent complained loudly. "Come be a good little boyfriend and pick her up. We want to keep partying, and she is bringing down the vibe," Trent demanded. I leaned back in my chair. A few months ago, this call would have sent me into a blind panic. I would have grabbed my car keys, driven through the pouring rain, and dragged Maya out of the club while her friends mocked me behind my back. I would have brought her home, given her water, and gently put her to bed. But tonight, sitting in the cold, blue light of my monitor, I felt absolutely nothing. A dark, genuine laugh bubbled up from my chest. It felt incredibly good to let it out. "Leon, bro, did you just laugh?" Trent sounded confused, the condescending tone dropping from his voice. "I said your girlfriend is crying. Get your car and come get her." "Listen closely, Trent," I said, my voice cutting through the heavy bass of the club like a razor blade. "I am not coming. Tell Maya to call her favorite junior developer. I hear Julian is fantastic at handling emotional breakdowns," I added coldly. "He's great with warm liquids. I'm sure he can hold her hair back while she throws up in the alley," I said, a cruel smirk touching my lips. "Bro, what the hell are you talking about?" Trent stammered. "Julian isn't even here. Come get your girl. It is raining, and she can't even stand up." "Then call her an Uber, Trent. Tell her to charge it to the company card," I replied smoothly. "Have a great night." "You are a toxic piece of..." Trent yelled. But I didn't let him finish. I pulled the phone away from my ear and tapped the big red button. The loud, thumping bass instantly vanished, replaced by the quiet, steady drumming of the Seattle rain. I didn't stop there. I opened my contacts. I found Trent's name. Block. I found Sarah, the lead designer. Block. I found Marcus, the finance guy. Block. With quick, machine-like efficiency, I deleted and blocked every single person from Maya's toxic circle. I put the phone face down on the desk. The apartment suddenly felt incredibly suffocating. The air smelled stale, like dead flowers and old arguments. I looked around the small guest room and realized I couldn't stay here another night. I refused to be sitting here when Maya eventually stumbled through the front door, smelling of cheap tequila and looking for a fight. I opened a new tab on my laptop. I typed quickly, immediate move-in, industrial loft, Seattle warehouse district, cash. I didn't want a nice, modern apartment. I wanted a fortress, a place where her drama couldn't reach me. After 5 minutes of scrolling through sketchy listings, I found one. It was deep in the industrial district, surrounded by old factories and neon-lit auto shops. The photos showed exposed brick walls, exposed metal pipes, and a massive steel front door. The listing had a phone number that said, "Call anytime. Ask for Silas." It was 12:15 a.m. I dialed the number. It rang twice before a rough, gravelly voice answered. Yeah. Silas answered gruffly. Silas, I asked. I am looking at the warehouse loft on 9th Avenue. I need a place tonight. I have the first and last month as rent in cash right now. There was a pause. The sound of a lighter flicking and someone taking a drag of a cigarette echoed through the speaker. You running from the cops or a woman, kid? Silas chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. A woman. I answered honestly. Rent's still $2,000 a month. Meet me at the loading dock in 20 minutes. Bring the cash. Don't be late, Silas said. I'm on my way, I said, grabbing my keys. I grabbed my jacket and sprinted out to my car. The drive through the city was a blur of smeared neon lights and heavy rain pounding on my windshield. When I pulled up to the rusted loading dock, Silas was waiting under a broken street lamp. He was a massive, scarred guy in a heavy leather jacket. He didn't ask questions. He led me to a terrifying, rattling freight elevator that smelled like engine oil and damp concrete. We rode it up to the 4th floor. When the metal gates slammed open, he walked me down a dark hallway and unlocked a heavy steel door with 3 separate deadbolts. He pushed the door open and flipped a switch. 4 bright, industrial lights buzzed to life. The loft was massive. It was cold, empty, and perfect. The floors were scuffed concrete. The windows were huge and covered in grime, and the walls were solid brick. It looked like a bunker. It felt totally isolated from the rest of the world. It is perfect, I said, pulling a thick white envelope of cash from my inside jacket pocket. I counted the bills out right onto a dusty wooden shipping crate. Silas counted the money, nodded slowly, and handed me a heavy brass key. Welcome to the grim side of the city, kid. Nobody bothers you here unless you want them to, Silas said. That is exactly what I'm hoping for, I said, gripping the cold metal key. I left the warehouse and drove straight back to Maya's apartment. It was 1:30 a.m. The place was still dark. She wasn't home yet. I didn't waste a single second. I went straight to the hall closet and pulled out a stack of heavy-duty cardboard moving boxes I had bought earlier in the week. I grabbed a tape gun. Skirt. The loud, tearing sound of the packing tape echoed through the empty apartment. I moved like a machine. I didn't stop to look at old photos. I didn't hold on to old gifts and cry. I just packed. I boxed up my high-end computer monitors, my expensive drawing tablets, my clothes, and my favorite books. I left every single thing that belonged to us. The expensive espresso machine, the fancy couch, the matching towels. I didn't want any of it. It all felt stained. By 3 a.m., my entire life was stacked by the front door in 6 neat, brown cardboard boxes. I was sweating. My hands were covered in dust, but my chest felt incredibly light. The heavy, crushing weight I had been carrying for 6 months was completely gone. I looked at the front door, waiting for the handle to turn. I was ready to leave. Chapter 5. It was 3:15 a.m. I was sitting on the edge of the glass coffee table, staring at my 6 cardboard boxes. The apartment was completely silent, except for the heavy Seattle rain lashing against the windows. My packed life sat by the front door, waiting. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A single notification was glowing in the dark. Incoming encrypted message from Julian. Self-destruct timer, 10 seconds. Why would Julian be messaging me in the middle of the night? I tapped the screen and opened the message. It was a picture. Julian was lying in a bed. Not his bed. My bed. Or rather, the expensive memory foam bed Maya and I shared. He was lying exactly on my side, resting his head on my dark, gray pillow. He had a smug, highly punchable smirk on his face, holding up a glass of red wine with 2 fingers raised in a peace sign. The caption at the bottom read, "Oops, sent to the wrong chat. Sorry, bro, just keeping her side warm while you're busy being toxic." The timer ticked down. 3, 2, 1. The photo vanished from the screen, leaving absolutely no trace. It was wiped from the server. I didn't feel a spike of hot rage. I didn't want to punch a wall. Instead, I felt a twisted, dark sense of awe at his sheer, cartoonish audacity. The kid was practically begging for a physical fight, but driving over there to give him a black eye would mean I actually cared. It would mean he won the game. I just smiled a cold, empty smile and slipped the phone back into my jacket pocket. At 3:30 a.m., the heavy brass deadbolt on the front door finally clicked. The door violently swung open, hitting the wall with a loud bang. Maya stumbled inside. She was soaking wet from the rain, her expensive black mascara running down her pale cheeks like dirty ink. The smell of stale tequila and bad decisions immediately filled the quiet hallway. "You," she slurred, pointing a shaking, angry finger at me. "You are the most selfish, pathetic excuse for a partner I have ever met in my entire life." She kicked off her high heels, One of them flew through the air and hit the wall with a sharp thud. "Trent called you. He begged you to come," she screamed, her voice echoing in the empty feeling apartment. "I was literally throwing up in a dirty club bathroom, Leon. I was having a breakdown," Maya yelled. "And you just laughed at him and blocked everyone's numbers. What kind of sick, twisted psychopath does that to the woman he loves?" she demanded. I didn't move from the coffee table. I just watched her perform her drunken theater. "I work 80 hours a week," she yelled, waving her arms frantically. "I am under so much stress trying to keep this startup alive. I just needed you to be a man tonight, and come get me," she cried. "But no, you leave me stranded in the rain because you're throwing a massive baby tantrum over Julian," Maya accused. She took 2 aggressive steps forward, taking a deep breath to keep yelling. Then she stopped, her blurry, angry eyes finally focused. She looked past my shoulders. She saw the bare bookshelves in the living room. She saw the empty desk in the corner, where my computer used to sit. Then, her eyes slowly landed on the 6 heavy cardboard boxes stacked neatly by the front door. My canvas duffel bag was sitting right on top of them. The drunken anger drained out of her face in a single second. It was replaced by sheer, freezing terror. The alcohol seemed to evaporate straight out of her blood. "Leon!" Her voice was suddenly tiny. It trembled. What are those?" "Boxes, Maya," I said smoothly, standing up from the coffee table. "Usually, people put their things inside them when they are leaving." No, she stammered, shaking her head frantically. She rushed forward, grabbing onto the sleeves of my leather jacket. "You're packing, right now, in the middle of the night? Over a stupid argument about a nightclub?" she asked in disbelief. "Leon, baby, please. I'm just drunk." "I didn't mean any of what I just said. I'm just tired," Maya begged. "It is not about the club, Maya," I said. I gently but firmly peeled her shaking hands off my arms. "It is about the fact that Julian just sent me a self-destructing selfie from my side of the bed," I revealed coldly. "It is about you lying to my face. It is about me being entirely done with this circus," I added. Maya's eyes went wide with pure panic. "A selfie? No, Leon, I swear to God, nothing happened. He just came over earlier this evening to drop off some server paperwork. He was tired, so he sat down for a minute," she pleaded. "I didn't even know he took a picture. He is just a stupid, clumsy kid making a bad joke," Maya cried. "A bad joke," I repeated, a dark chuckle escaping my throat. "Right. Hilarious. Please, Leon." Tears started pouring down her face in heavy streams. I'll fire him first thing on Monday morning. I'll block his number right now. Just don't leave. Please. You're my rock. I can't run this company or my life without you," she begged. For a split second, I looked at her crying face and remembered the ambitious, kind girl I met 5 years ago. But that girl was dead and gone. Right at that exact moment, a loud, obnoxious pop song started blasting through the room. Ring, ring. It was Maya's phone. It was the custom ringtone she had set specifically for Julian, the exact same ringtone I had begged her to change 3 months ago. Maya froze, like a deer caught in the headlights of a speeding truck. The phone vibrated violently in her wet coat pocket. "Answer it," I said, my voice completely hollow and dead. "No," she panicked, taking a step back and shaking her head. "No, I'm ignoring it. You see, I'm ignoring him. He doesn't matter." "Answer it, Maya, or I pick up my bags and walk out that door right now," I threatened calmly. Trembling violently, she reached into her pocket, pulled out the glowing phone, and hit accept. She put it on speaker so I could hear. "Maya!" Julian's voice cried out. He sounded breathless, frantic, and terrified. "Maya, please help me. I'm walking home from the gas station, and there's a guy in a dark hoodie following me." Julian lied. "I think he has a knife. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do," he pleaded. It was such a blatant, poorly acted lie. He wasn't panting from running. He sounded like he was lounging on a sofa. Maya's face twisted in agony. She looked at the phone in her hand, then looked up at me. "Julian, run to a brightly lit street," she said into the phone, her voice shaking. "Call the police right now." "No, the police won't get here in time. Maya, please, you're the only one close by," Julian whined. "Please, come get me in your car. I'm begging you, I don't want to get stabbed," he cried. The line went completely silent as he waited for his favorite savior to react. Maya looked at me, her eyes completely torn in half. "Leon, a guy is following him. He could get hurt. It is a literal life or death emergency, she whispered. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just picked up my heavy duffel bag and slung it over my shoulder. I pointed right at the open front door. Go, I said simply. Go save him, Maya. Leon, please, just wait, she started. Go, I barked, my voice finally cracking like a whip through the room. If you don't walk out that door to save him, he is going to keep calling until one of us breaks. So go play the hero, I commanded. Maya let out a broken, pathetic sob. She looked at my packed boxes, then at the glowing phone in her hand. The sick, twisted codependency won. It always did. I'll be right back, she cried, turning around. Just wait right here for me. I'll drop him off at his apartment and come right back to fix this. She sprinted out the door and ran down the hallway, her footsteps echoing loudly. I stood in the quiet apartment for exactly 5 seconds. Then, I grabbed my first heavy box. I wasn't going to be there when she got back. I was going to my new fortress in the rain. Chapter 6. It had been 3 days since I walked out of that apartment. 3 days of pure, uninterrupted silence inside my new concrete bunker. The warehouse loft on 9th Avenue was exactly what I needed. It was cold, it was tough, and it smelled like old motor oil and the rich roasted coffee from the industrial roaster downstairs. The massive steel door had 3 heavy deadbolts, and the large, grimy windows let in the flashing, distorted neon lights of the Seattle streets. There was no lavender scent here, no Maya, no Julian. Just me, my computer, and the steady rhythmic drumming of the rain against the glass. I sat at my metal drafting desk, drinking bitter black coffee. For the first time in 3 days, I decided to turn my phone off airplane mode. I needed to check an email from a freelance client. The second the phone connected to the network, it absolutely exploded. The device vibrated so hard it nearly danced right off the metal desk. Notification after notification flooded the bright screen. It was a graveyard of digital desperation. 74 missed calls. 212 text messages. Almost all of them were from Maya. I scrolled past the endless blocks of text without reading the full paragraphs. The opening lines were enough. Leon, where are you? Please come home. One message read. I came right back, and your boxes were gone. How could you do this? Read another. I fired him. I swear I did. Just text me back, she pleaded in the final text. I knew that last one was a lie. Maya didn't have the spine to fire Julian. Not when he could just fake another panic attack to keep her on the hook. She was too codependent. Then, I noticed a separate notification. A single voice note on Chirp, sent from an anonymous burner account. But I knew exactly who it was. The message had a little timer icon next to it. It was set to delete itself 3 seconds after I listened to it. A digital ghost. I tapped the play button and held the cold phone to my ear. Hey man, Julian's voice whispered through the speaker. He sounded incredibly smug, entirely too happy for a guy who almost got stabbed in an alley 3 days ago. Heard you packed your bags and ran away. Tough break, Julian taunted softly. Maya was pretty broken up about it when she got to my place. But don't worry, I made her breakfast the next morning, he sneered. You really should have stayed. See ya, Julian whispered before the line clicked. The audio file vanished instantly. The screen refreshed, leaving a blank space where the message had been. He left no trace, no evidence. He just wanted to twist the knife, knowing I couldn't prove a thing. I didn't throw the phone. I actually smiled. A dark, cold smile. I deleted the entire message thread and blocked the burner account. He thought he was winning a game I had already stopped playing. Suddenly, a heavy, frantic pounding echoed through the loft. Someone was hammering on my steel front door. It wasn't Silas, the landlord. His knock was slow and heavy. This knock was panicked and desperate. I walked over to the door and looked through the rusted metal peephole. Out in the dim, flickering fluorescent light of the hallway stood Maya. She looked like an absolute wreck. Dark bags hung heavily under her bloodshot eyes. Her expensive beige trench coat was soaking wet from the freezing rain, and her hair was plastered in messy strands against her pale cheeks. I unfastened the 3 heavy deadbolts. Clack, clack, clack. I pulled the heavy door open, but I stood firmly in the doorway, blocking her from stepping inside. How did you find me? I asked, my voice completely flat and devoid of emotion. Leon, she sobbed, lunging forward to throw her arms around my neck. I took a quick step backward, dodging her embrace. She stumbled slightly into the cold room, her wet boots squeaking on the concrete floor. She looked around the gritty, shadow-filled warehouse loft in sheer horror. Your car, she gasped, shivering violently. I paid a shady private tow company to run your license plates through the city cameras. Leon, you've been gone for 3 days. I thought you were dead. I thought you drove off a bridge. Maya cried frantically. What is this awful place? It looks like a prison, she shrieked. It is my new home, I said calmly, crossing my arms. It is quiet. I like it. Now, what do you want, Maya? I want you to come home, she begged, fresh tears mixing with the rain on her face. Please, Leon. Pack your things. Let's leave this creepy place. I am so sorry. I handled everything wrong, she pleaded. How is Julian? I asked smoothly. Did he survive his imaginary attacker in the alley? Maya flinched, her eyes darting to the floor for a microsecond. He is fine. The guy following him was just a homeless man who got confused. It was a mistake, and Leon, he is gone. I suspended him. Maya swore desperately. He is not at the office right now. I swear to God. Just please, come back to the apartment. We can fix this, she promised. I stared at her. She was still lying. Suspended, wasn't fired. She was still keeping him around, waiting for me to cool off so she could sneak him back in. I didn't yell. I didn't point out the lie. I simply turned my back on her and walked over to my metal drafting desk. Leon, she asked nervously, watching me. What are you doing? I picked up a thick, yellow manila envelope. I had picked it up from my lawyer's office just yesterday afternoon. I walked back to the doorway and held the envelope out to her. Maya looked at it, confused. She wiped her running mascara with the back of her wet hand. What is this? An apology letter. A new apartment lease? She asked hopefully. Open it, I commanded, my tone turning to absolute ice. Her trembling hands took the thick envelope. She tore open the paper flap and pulled out the heavy stack of legal documents inside. She flipped to the first page. Her eyes scanned the bold, black text printed at the very top. Notice of investment withdrawal and formal share buyout demand. The documents rattled, like dry leaves as her hands started to shake violently. The tiny bit of color left in her face drained away completely. She looked like she had just been shot. Leon, she whispered, her voice choking in her throat. What does this mean? It means exactly what it says, I replied, looking her dead in the eyes. I am pulling my seed money out of your startup, every single penny. You can't do this, she screamed, the sadness instantly vanishing, replaced by sheer animal panic. You own 40% of the company. If you pull your capital out now, the servers shut down tomorrow. Maya panicked. The investors will run away. We will be totally bankrupt by Friday, she shrieked. That sounds like a CEO problem, Maya, I said coldly. Not my problem. Leon, please. You know I don't have this kind of cash, she shrieked, waving the papers wildly in the air. All of the money is tied up in development and salaries. Maya cried. Then you better find it, I said, stepping forward and forcing her back toward the hallway. My lawyer drafted those terms yesterday. You have exactly 2 choices, I explained smoothly. You buy out my shares at the current market value, or I force a total liquidation of the company's assets. I will sell your servers for scrap metal to get my mother's money back. You have 14 days, I concluded. 14 days, she gasped, clutching her chest like she couldn't breathe. Where am I going to get that kind of money? I grabbed the handle of the heavy steel door. I looked at her panicked, terrified face, and I felt absolutely nothing but a deep sense of peace. Ask Julian, I said softly. Maybe he can paint you another ceramic mug and you can sell it. Now, get out of my loft. I slammed the heavy steel door right in her face. I threw the 3 deadbolts back into place. Clack, clack, clack. Outside, I could hear her sobbing uncontrollably against the metal, but I just walked back to my desk. I sat down and took another sip of my hot black coffee. The Cold War was over. Now, it was just business. Chapter 7. 2 days after I dropped the buyout bomb on Maya, the atmosphere in my loft shifted. It suddenly smelled like burning plastic and charred meat, a toxic cloud ruining my sanctuary. I was sitting calmly at my drafting desk, finalizing a sleek, minimalist logo for a new corporate client. Suddenly, a piercing, high-pitched scream echoed through the cold concrete hallway. It wasn't a human scream. It was the desperate shriek of a cheap, battery-operated smoke detector. What the hell are you doing? A rough voice roared through the walls. It was Silas, the landlord, his voice vibrating with absolute rage. I stood up from my chair, slid my heavy steel door open, and stepped out into the dark hallway. Thick, toxic gray smoke was pouring out from beneath the door of Unit 4B. The terrible, drafty, unrenovated apartment directly next to mine. Silas was standing there in his stained undershirt, holding a massive red fire extinguisher in his scarred hands, coughing violently into his shoulder. Suddenly, the door to Unit 4B flew open, crashing loudly against the hallway wall. Maya stumbled out into the hallway. She was coughing loudly, waving a floral kitchen towel frantically through the thick black smoke. She was wearing a ridiculous, frilly pink apron over her expensive, dry-clean-only designer blouse. It was a bizarre, jarring sight. Her face was smeared with dark black soot, and in her other hand, she was holding a heavy cast iron frying pan. Inside the pan was a piece of steak that looked exactly like a smoking, hockey puck-sized lump of coal. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Maya choked out, her eyes watering profusely from the acrid smoke. The stove here is completely broken. It just burst into flames out of nowhere, she cried defensively. Silas shoved past her with brutal force, sprayed a quick, deafening blast of white foam into the tiny, terrible kitchen, and slammed the door shut. He turned around, glaring at her with absolute unmasked disgust. I told you that stove was from the 90s, lady, Silas yelled, his face turning purple. Next time you try to burn my building down, I'm keeping your deposit and throwing you off the damn roof, he threatened. Silas stomped away down the hall, cursing bitterly under his breath. The smoke alarm finally sputtered, a dying chirp, and went silent. I just leaned casually against my steel doorframe, crossing my arms over my chest. Maya stood in the smoky hallway, clutching the ruined frying pan to her chest, looking completely pathetic and entirely out of place. Maya, I said, my voice dead flat and echoing slightly in the concrete hall. What are you doing here? She jumped at the sound of my voice, quickly wiping the soot off her cheek with the back of her hand, though it only smeared the dark grease worse. She forced a bright, completely unhinged smile onto her face. It was the smile of a desperate woman trying to pretend everything was perfectly normal. Surprise, Maya said, her voice shaking with forced enthusiasm. I moved in. I rented the unit right next to yours. I paid Silas triple the rent in cash just to get it today, she added, as if I should be impressed by her financial recklessness. You rented a roach-infested box in a warehouse district, I said slowly, letting the sheer absurdity of her actions hang in the smoky air. I wanted to be close to you, Leon, Maya pleaded, taking a hesitant step toward me. She held up the blackened frying pan like it was a grand prize. Look, I tried to cook you dinner. I remembered you used to love it when I made steak on Fridays, she babbled nervously. I know I've been a terrible girlfriend lately, but I am changing, I swear it. I'm going to be the perfect partner. From now on, you always come first, she promised, her eyes wide and begging. It was a masterclass in dark comedy. The ruthless, tech-obsessed CEO of $1 million startup was standing in a filthy hallway, covered in toxic smoke. She was holding a piece of charcoal, trying to play a 1950s housewife, just to stop me from liquidating her precious company. Come inside before you choke to death in the hallway, I said coldly, stepping back to let her into my loft. Maya's eyes lit up with desperate hope. She scurried inside like a frightened mouse, placing the burnt frying pan on my metal drafting table. She looked around my clean, meticulously organized loft, shivering slightly from the damp chill of the concrete. We can fix this, Leon, Maya said, stepping closer to me. Her voice was a desperate, urgent whisper. I know the buyout demand was just a wake-up call. You just wanted to show me how serious you were. It worked. I'm awake now, she reasoned frantically. I will transfer Julian to a different department. I'll make sure you never have to see him again, she promised. Please, let's just go home and cancel the legal papers, she begged, looking up at me. I looked down at her. She still didn't get it. She thought this was a negotiation. She thought I was throwing a tantrum for attention, trying to win a power struggle. Transfer him? I asked smoothly, raising a single eyebrow. Yes, I'll put him in the basement office. He won't be my assistant anymore. Maya promised quickly, thinking she had found the winning compromise. I walked over to the metal table and stared down at the burnt steak. Maya, do you remember what I told you the night I left? I asked quietly. She swallowed hard, her throat bobbing. You said I was playing savior to a parasite, she whispered. Exactly, I said, turning slowly to face her. So here is the final test. You want me to rip up those buyout papers? You want me to believe you've changed? I challenged her, my voice turning to ice. Yes, anything. Tell me what to do, she cried eagerly. Pull out your phone, I commanded simply. Maya quickly dug into her expensive coat pocket and pulled out her glowing smartphone. Call Julian right now, I said, my voice dropping to a freezing, dead whisper. Put him on speaker. Tell him he is completely fired. Tell him to pack his desk, and tell him if he ever contacts you again, you will call the police, I instructed ruthlessly. And then, I want you to delete his number while I watch, I finished, staring completely through her. Maya froze. The fake, bright housewife smile melted right off her face in an instant. Her thumb hovered over the glass screen, shaking violently. The silence in the loft was deafening. Leon, she stammered, her breathing speeding up into a panicked rhythm. He needs the job to pay his rent. If I fire him like that, out of nowhere, he might have a mental breakdown, she argued weakly. It is too cruel. Do it, Maya, I said, entirely unmoved. Or the buyout proceeds, and your company is dead in 13 days. Tears welled up in her bloodshot eyes. She was backed into a corner, completely trapped by her own web of codependency. Shaking like a leaf in the wind, she unlocked her phone and scrolled to Julian's name. She took a deep, shuddering breath, preparing her thumb to press the green call button. Suddenly, The phone erupted in her hands. Ring, ring. The obnoxious custom pop song blasted through the quiet loft. Julian was calling her. The timing was so perfect, so incredibly manipulative, that I almost laughed out loud. He must have known she was missing and decided to play his favorite victim card. Maya jumped out of her skin, nearly dropping the device onto the concrete floor. She stared at the vibrating screen, terrified. "Answer it," I said, crossing my arms, "and fire him." With trembling, hesitant fingers, she hit accept and put the call on speaker. "Maya." Julian's voice screamed through the tiny speaker. He didn't sound sad. He sounded completely hysterical. The wind was howling loudly in the background, a harsh, rushing noise. "Maya, I can't do this anymore. I can't take the pressure." Julian sobbed loudly. "I know Leon hates me, and he is making you choose." "Julian, calm down. Where are you?" Maya panicked, her voice cracking as the maternal instinct hijacked her brain. "I'm on the roof of the office building." Julian screamed over the noise. The fake wind noise sounded exactly like he was just blowing directly into the microphone with his mouth. It was pathetic. "I'm standing on the ledge, Maya. If you abandon me, I have nothing left," he cried dramatically. "I'm going to jump. I swear to God, I'm going to jump right now." Maya let out a horrified, ear-piercing shriek. "No, Julian, step back. Please, don't move. Only if you come here right now. Swear, you won't leave me," Julian demanded, springing his trap. Maya looked at me, her face pale, with sheer, unfiltered terror. "Leon, he is on the roof. He is going to kill himself. A human life is on the line," she yelled at me. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I just pointed a steady finger right at the heavy steel door. "Go save him, Maya," I said softly, sealing her fate. "I have to go. I'll be right back. I promise I'll fire him tomorrow," she screamed, already turning and running for the door. She practically tore the metal handle off as she ripped the heavy door open and sprinted out into the dark hallway. Her frantic, high-heeled footsteps echoed wildly down the concrete corridor, fading rapidly into the distance. I stood alone in the quiet, smoke-tinged loft, listening to her fade away entirely. The loop was perfectly complete. She had failed the test, exactly like I knew she would. I walked slowly over to the metal drafting table. I picked up a silver fork. I stabbed a piece of the blackened, charred steak she had cooked, lifted it up, and took a bite. It tasted like bitter ash, burnt rubber, and absolute freedom. I chewed it slowly, swallowed the dry lump, and smiled. "Delicious," I whispered to the empty room. Chapter 8. The metallic taste of the burnt steak still lingered in my mouth, a bitter reminder of the chaos. I washed it down with the last sip of my cold, acidic, black coffee. The massive warehouse loft was completely silent, except for the heavy Seattle rain beating relentlessly against the dirty glass windows. Maya had been gone for exactly 2 hours. By now, she had rushed to the office building, climbed the stairs in a blind panic, and found Julian safe and sound. He probably cried, gave her some fake speech about feeling worthless, and let her save him. It was a pathetic, predictable script. Before I could even sit down at my desk, a heavy fist pounded on my steel door. I unlocked the 3 deadbolts and pulled it open with a loud creak. Silas stood there, still holding his red fire extinguisher, smelling powerfully like chemical foam and cheap cigars. "You good in there, kid?" Silas grumbled, his rough eyes scanning my dim room. "Your crazy ex didn't burn your side of the wall, did she?" "I smell smoke," he asked. "I'm fine, Silas," I said, leaning casually against the cold door frame. "Not a scratch, just some bad cooking." Silas snorted, shaking his head in deep disgust. "Woman like that? They don't just burn the steak, kid. They burn the whole house down just to see the flames." "Watch your back," he warned gruffly. "I'm watching," I replied, a cold smile forming on my face. "In fact, I'm setting up a trap right now." He gave me a weird, judging look, then turned and walked down the dark, flickering hallway. "Just pay the rent on time, kid." "I don't care what kind of weird games you play," Silas called back over his shoulder. I locked the heavy door and went straight to my metal drafting desk. Silas was absolutely right. Maya was going to burn everything down. But I wasn't going to be inside the house when it happened. I knew Julian. I knew the kind of toxic, arrogant little boy he really was beneath the fake panic attacks. Faking a crisis to get Maya away from me wasn't enough for him. He needed to rub it in. He needed to feel like he had totally crushed me. He wouldn't be able to resist gloating. I picked up my phone. I didn't open my messages. Instead, I opened my app store. I typed in Screen Recorder Pro. I hit download and watched the progress bar fill. It took 10 seconds to install. I opened the app, gave it all the permissions it needed, and hit the big red record button. A tiny glowing red dot appeared in the top corner of my screen. Every single swipe, Tap, a notification was now being filmed and saved directly to my hard drive. I set the phone down on the metal desk, face up. "All right, Julian," I whispered to the empty room. "Show me what you've got." The neon light from the street lamp outside flashed through the window, painting the loft in a bruised purple glow. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the blank screen. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. I started to wonder if maybe I had misjudged him. Maybe he was actually satisfied just having her there. Then, the screen lit up. Buzz. Buzz. A notification popped up at the very top of my screen. It was a direct message on Chirp. The sender name wasn't a burner account this time. He was too proud for that now. It was his real account. Julian Codes. I didn't touch the phone. I just let the screen recorder capture the notification bubble. Guess who came running back? "Took her exactly 12 minutes to leave your ugly new place," Julian wrote. I smiled a thin, ice-cold smile. Right on schedule. Another message popped up instantly. She was shaking, bro. Crying so hard. "She thought I was actually going to jump off the roof," he typed. It was hilarious. "You should have seen her face," Julian added. I rested my chin on my hands, reading the words. There was no anger. My heart rate didn't even speed up. It was like watching a documentary about a very stupid animal walking directly into a bear trap. "You really thought you could make her fire me. You tried to play the big tough guy with your buyout papers, but you still lost," read the next message. "She chose me again. She always chooses me," Julian gloated. He was typing fast now. The messages were rolling in, one after another, stacking up on my glowing screen. He was using his favorite self-destruct feature. The little timer icons next to each text showed they would delete forever, in 60 seconds. He thought he was a ghost. He thought there would be zero evidence. He didn't notice the tiny red recording dot at the top of my screen. She is in the bathroom right now washing her face. But she is staying here tonight. "In my bed," Julian sent. "Why aren't you replying, Leon? Are you crying? Are you smashing things in that dirty warehouse?" he taunted. "Talk to me, old man. Admit that you lost," Julian challenged. I didn't touch the keyboard. I just let the camera roll. Then came the grand finale. The image file. It loaded onto the screen with a slight blur before snapping into crystal clear focus. It was a selfie taken from the waist up. Julian was shirtless, lying against the pillows of his bed. His hair was messy, and he had that same arrogant, highly punchable smirk on his face. But that wasn't the main focus of the picture. In the background, through the slightly open bathroom door, you could clearly see Maya. She had her expensive trench coat off. She was standing in front of his bathroom mirror, wearing one of his oversized t-shirts, splashing water on her face. It was the ultimate betrayal, captured in a single frame. The caption underneath the photo was simple and vicious. "She says she misses your cooking, but she prefers my company. Pathetic," Julian wrote. I watched the timer on the photo tick down. 10, 9, 8. Julian sent one last text before the wipe. "Don't bother trying to show her this. It'll be gone before you can even screenshot it. Sweet dreams, loser," he typed. 3, 2, 1. Like magic, the entire chat log vanished. The photo, the cruel texts, the bragging about faking an unalive attempt, all of it disappeared into the digital void. The screen went completely blank, showing only an empty chat history. Julian thought he had committed the perfect crime. He thought he had driven the final knife into my chest and walked away without leaving a single fingerprint. I calmly reached out and tapped the screen. I swiped down from the top menu and hit the red stop recording button. A notification popped up. Video file saved to gallery. I opened my photo gallery and clicked on the newest file. The video started playing. There it was. Every single message, every toxic brag, the confession about faking his jump from the roof. The explicit photo of Maya in his apartment. The timer ticking down and the final wipe. It was all there, recorded in high-definition video format. I didn't just save it. I uploaded the video file to my secure cloud drive. Then I plugged a heavy metal USB stick into my laptop and copied the file there too. I locked the USB stick safely inside my desk drawer. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long, slow breath. The heavy weight that had been crushing me for 6 months was completely gone. I felt lighter than air. Maya was going to knock on my heavy steel door tomorrow morning. I knew she would. She would come smelling like cheap lavender. And she would tell me a brand new lie. She would say she talked him down. She would say she slept on his couch. She would beg me to tear up the buyout papers and come home. And this time, I wouldn't have to argue. I stood up, turned off the lights in the loft, and went to sleep. It was the best, deepest sleep I had gotten in 5 years. Chapter 9. The gray dawn of Seattle slowly crept through the massive, grimy windows of my warehouse loft, casting pale shadows across the concrete floor. For the first time in 6 months, I had slept a full 8 hours. I didn't wake up with a tight chest. I didn't immediately reach for my phone in a blind panic to check Maya's location. I just got out of bed, stretched my aching shoulders, and started brewing a fresh pot of strong dark roast coffee. At exactly 7:15 a.m., the heavy pounding started. Thud, thud, thud. It wasn't Silas this time. The knocking was frantic, weak, and desperate. It sounded like someone leaning their entire body weight against the steel. I poured my coffee into a black ceramic mug, walked over to the heavy steel door, and slid the 3 deadbolts back. Clack, clack, clack. I pulled the door open. Maya stood in the dim, flickering fluorescent light of the hallway. She looked like an absolute ghost. She was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, but they were deeply wrinkled and stained. Her expensive makeup was completely washed away, leaving her face pale, sunken, and hollow. And then, the smell hit me. She didn't smell like the cold, fresh Seattle rain. She smelled like cheap lavender fabric softener and strong men's cologne. Julian's cologne. It practically radiated off her skin, a sickening cloud of betrayal. "Morning," I said, taking a slow sip of my hot coffee. I didn't block the doorway this time. I left it wide open. "Leon," Maya whispered, her voice totally hoarse and broken. She stepped into the cold loft, shivering slightly as her boots squeaked on the concrete. She looked up at me with wide, pleading eyes. She was ready to perform her final act. "I am so exhausted," she sighed dramatically. "I can imagine," I replied smoothly, leaning against the metal doorframe. "Fighting fires all night takes a lot out of you." "You have no idea," Maya said, letting out a heavy, tragic sigh. She wrapped her arms tightly around herself. "It was the most terrifying night of my entire life. I got to the office, and he was already up on the roof," she claimed. "He was standing right on the concrete ledge, Leon. The wind was blowing so hard. He was crying, looking down at the street." She lied flawlessly. I didn't blink. I just watched her face. "Is that right?" I asked. "Yes," Maya swallowed hard, forcing a convincing tear to roll down her pale cheek. "I had to beg him. I was on that freezing roof for 3 hours. I finally had to grab his jacket and physically pull him back," she insisted. "He collapsed in my arms. He was a complete wreck," Maya finished, staring at me. "Wow, you're a real hero, Maya," I said, my voice dead flat. She took a step closer, reaching out to gently touch my arm. I drove him straight to his apartment. He was shaking and throwing up. Maya continued to weave the web. "I had to stay on his lumpy couch all night, just to make sure he didn't try to hurt himself again," she said. "But we talked, Leon. We had a really long, deep talk," she added softly. "Oh," I asked, raising an eyebrow. "What did you talk about?" "Boundaries," Maya said quickly, her eyes lighting up with fake, desperate hope. "He finally realizes that he has been way too dependent on me. He knows he crossed a line. He apologized for everything," she swore. "Leon, he is officially resigning on Monday. He's going to move back to his hometown to get professional help," Maya concluded. She looked at me, waiting for the applause. She was waiting for me to drop my coffee mug, pull her into my arms, and tell her everything was going to be fine. She had built the perfect narrative. The tragic victim, the heroic rescue, and the neat, tidy resolution. "So," I asked, taking another sip of coffee, "how was the couch?" Maya blinked, slightly thrown off. "What?" "It was uncomfortable. But I had to stay. I couldn't leave him alone," she stammered. "Right. The couch." I nodded slowly. I turned around and walked over to my metal drafting desk. I set my coffee mug down. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed my large curved computer monitor and rotated it around so it was facing the center of the room. "Leon, what are you doing?" Maya asked, her voice dropping into a nervous, confused whisper. "I just told you he is leaving. It is over. We can go home now," she insisted. "Come here, Maya," I commanded softly. She hesitated, her boots squeaking loudly against the concrete floor. She slowly walked over to the desk, standing right beside me. She looked at the blank, black screen of the monitor. I reached down and clicked the mouse. The screen flashed to life. My video player opened, paused on the very first frame. It was a clear, high-definition screen recording of my phone from last night. "You said you were on the roof for 3 hours," I said quietly, hovering my hand over the keyboard. "You said you slept on the couch." I hit the spacebar. The video started playing. Maya watched the screen. The timestamp on the video showed 9:15 p.m. Suddenly, the first direct message popped up on the recording. Julian Codes wrote, "Guess who came running back? Took her exactly 12 minutes to leave your ugly new place." I read aloud. Maya stopped breathing. She froze completely solid, her eyes widening in absolute horror. The next message popped up on the monitor. Julian Codes wrote. She was shaking, bro. Crying so hard, She thought I was actually going to jump off the roof. It was hilarious. You should have seen her face. I read flatly. No, Maya whispered. The sound barely escaped her pale lips. Julian Codes wrote, "You really thought you could make her fire me. You tried to play the big tough guy with your buyout papers, but you still lost," the video showed. He continued, "She chose me again. She always chooses me." Her hands started to shake violently. The fake tears from her heroic story vanished, replaced by real, raw, uncontrollable panic. Julian Codes wrote, "She is in the bathroom right now washing her face, but she is staying here tonight." In my bed, the text bubbled up on screen. "Leon, please, turn it off." Maya choked out, backing away from the monitor. She was trembling so hard, her knees looked like they were going to give out beneath her. "Watch the whole thing," I commanded, my voice turning into freezing ice. The grand finale loaded on the screen. The high-resolution photo of Julian, lying in bed, shirtless, smirking right at the camera. And right there, in the background was Maya, wearing his oversized t-shirt, standing in his bathroom. The caption sat at the bottom like a poisoned blade. "She says she misses your cooking, but she prefers my company. Pathetic." The video showed the timer ticking down. 3, 2, 1. The screen wiped clean. The video ended. The silence in the warehouse loft was absolutely deafening. Maya's illusion didn't just break. It shattered into a million tiny, jagged pieces. The realization hit her like a speeding freight train. Julian didn't need her. He didn't want to die. He wasn't a fragile, broken kid looking for a savior. He was a vicious, manipulative predator who had used her as a pawn just to win a sick, twisted game against me, and she had fallen for it. Every single time, she collapsed. Her knees hit the hard concrete floor with a heavy thud. She wrapped her arms tightly around her stomach and let out a loud, agonizing, ugly sob. It was the sound of a woman watching her entire life burn to ash in a matter of seconds. He said he loved me," Maya wailed, her face buried deeply in her trembling hands. "He said he needed me. He lied. He made me think he was going to die," she sobbed. "He played you, Maya," I said, looking down at her shaking form. I didn't feel an ounce of pity. I didn't reach down to help her up. "And you let him. You threw away 5 years. You threw away my mother's money. And you threw away your dignity for a cheap joke," I stated ruthlessly. "Leon, I am so sorry," she screamed, crawling forward on the concrete to grab my shoes. "I was so stupid. I was so blind. Please, forgive me," Maya begged. "I'll ruin him. I'll destroy his life. Just don't leave me," she cried frantically. I took a slow step back, pulling my shoes completely out of her grasping reach. I reached onto the metal desk and picked up the thick manila envelope. I pulled out the formal buyout contract. I slapped the heavy stack of legal papers down onto the desk. It landed right next to the keyboard with a sharp smack. I picked up a black ink pen and tossed it directly on top of the documents. "I don't care what you do to him," I said, my voice perfectly calm and completely dead. "I don't care what happens to your company. And I don't care what happens to you," I finished. Maya stared up at me through a blurry, broken wall of tears. "Leon, please," she whimpered. I simply pointed at the papers. "Sign it," I commanded. "My bank details are on page 2. Have the money transferred by Friday, or I sell your servers for scrap," I said, ending it all. Chapter 10. The heavy, suffocating silence in the warehouse loft lasted for exactly 10 seconds. Maya was still on her knees, staring blankly at the black, dead screen of the computer monitor. Then, something truly terrifying happened. The fake, pathetic tears completely stopped. The agonizing sobs vanished into thin air. Maya slowly stood up from the cold concrete floor, dusting off the knees of her expensive designer pants. When she looked up at me, the terrified victim was completely gone. Her face was twisted into an ugly, vicious sneer. Her true colors finally bled through the cracks of her mask. "You think you're so smart, don't you, Leon?" Maya spat, her voice dripping with pure venom. I just leaned back against my metal desk. "I think I'm awake, Maya," I replied calmly. "That is the difference." "You're just a jealous, bitter loser," she snapped, pointing a sharp, trembling finger at my chest. "You think showing me that video changes anything? I don't care," Maya yelled. "Julian is young. He has vision, and he actually makes me feel alive," she screamed defensively. "You were always just a boring, quiet artist holding me back," Maya sneered. "You think I can't survive without your precious money?" she demanded. She was completely delusional. Instead of facing reality, she chose to double down on the fantasy. She chose the parasite. She snatched the black pen right off the metal desk with a violent swipe of her hand. She flipped the buyout contract open to the last page and aggressively signed her name. She pressed down so hard that the ink tore right through the thick legal paper. Maya screamed, throwing the pen fiercely against my brick wall. You'll have your stupid money by Friday. I'm taking out a massive loan against the company, she yelled. Julian and I are going to build an empire. And you are going to be nothing but a sad, lonely ghost, she threatened. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the loft, slamming the heavy steel door so hard it rattled the brick walls. I just looked at the signed paper sitting quietly on my desk. I didn't feel angry. I felt like I had just cut a massive, rusting weight off my ankle. By Thursday afternoon, my phone pinged with a sharp chime. I opened my banking app. A transfer of $4 million had successfully cleared into my account. She actually did it. She took out a toxic, high-interest predatory loan just to pay me off, desperately trying to save her own ego and keep Julian by her side. I didn't stick around Seattle to watch the flames. I packed my duffel bag, loaded up my car, and drove out of the city. For 3 solid months, I traveled. I drove through the hot, dry, unforgiving deserts of Nevada. I hiked the breathtaking red canyons of Utah, and breathed in the clean, freezing pine air of the Colorado mountains. I was entirely off the grid. No emails, no drama, no toxic startup stress, just pure, absolute freedom. But eventually, the road brings you back. 3 months later, I pulled my car back into the wet neon-lit streets of Seattle. It was raining, as always. I parked downtown to grab a cup of coffee from my favorite local cafe. As I walked out with my hot black coffee, I noticed a massive commotion across the street. A large white moving truck was parked illegally on the sidewalk. 2 angry men in heavy work jackets were rolling large, expensive computer servers out of the glass double doors of an office building. It was Maya's office building. The startup. I stopped at the corner, staying hidden in the shadows of the wet awning. Suddenly, Maya burst out of the glass doors. She looked absolutely insane. Her hair was a wild, tangled mess, and she was wearing a stained, oversized sweater. Put those back! Maya screamed at the movers, trying to grab a heavy server tower with her bare hands. You can't take those. We just need another week. The new app update is going to fix everything, she pleaded frantically. Back off, lady! One of the repo men shouted, aggressively shoving her hands away from the cart. The bank foreclosed on the whole floor. You're bankrupt. Talk to your lawyers, the man barked. Right behind her, walking out of the building with a calm, lazy stroll, was Julian. He wasn't wearing his cheap junior developer clothes anymore. He was wearing a brand new, wildly expensive designer jacket and carrying a heavy leather duffel bag. He looked perfectly healthy, perfectly smug, and completely unbothered by the fact that the company was being ripped apart. Maya spun around and grabbed Julian violently by the collar of his expensive jacket. Julian, do something! Maya shrieked, her desperate voice echoing down the rainy street. Call the crypto investors. You said you had millions lined up, she cried. I made you the vice president. I took out a $5 million loan to save your job and pay off Leon. Where's the company money? Maya wailed. Julian calmly reached up and peeled her frantic hands off his jacket. He didn't look scared. He looked deeply annoyed, like he was brushing a dirty bug off his shoulder. There are no crypto investors. Maya, Julian said, laughing a cold, cruel laugh. I transferred the last 50 grand from the company accounts into my private wallet an hour ago. He confessed without a shred of guilt. The ship is sinking, and I'm not drowning with you, Julian declared. Maya's eyes bulged out of her head. The final crushing reality broke her completely. You stole the money. I gave you everything. I ruined my entire life for you. You said you loved me, she screamed in agony. Julian zipped up his heavy leather duffel bag. He looked her up and down with absolute freezing disgust. The fake, fragile kid act was completely dead. Love you, Julian sneered, shaking his head. Go, old hag. I will find someone with more money after using her. You were just a desperate, easy ATM machine. Thanks for the jacket, though, Julian mocked. Maya let out a gut-wrenching, animalistic scream. She lunged at him, swinging her fists, but she was entirely too weak. Julian easily shoved her backward. She tripped awkwardly over the wet curb and fell hard onto the cold, soaking wet concrete of the Seattle sidewalk. Have a nice life on the street, boss, Julian mocked, turning his back on her for good. He walked swiftly down the avenue, disappearing into the sea of umbrellas and bright neon lights, never looking back once. Maya sat in a deep puddle of dirty rain, sobbing uncontrollably as the cold soaked through her clothes. The repo men completely ignored her, continuing to wheel her ruined dream into the back of their massive white truck. She had absolutely nothing left. No company, no money, no Julian. Slowly, she lifted her heavy head, her face covered in street mud and endless tears. Across the busy street, through the heavy gray rain, her eyes finally met mine. She saw me standing there under the dark awning. She saw my clean leather jacket, my perfectly calm face, and my steady, unbothered gaze. She reached a shaking, desperate hand out toward me across the rushing traffic. She opened her mouth, screaming my name over the deafening sound of the rain and the city. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I didn't feel a single drop of pity for the woman who traded everything for a lie. I took a slow sip of my hot, dark coffee. Then, I turned my back to her, walked down the sidewalk, and disappeared into the bright, beautiful neon lights of the city. I was finally, truly free.